Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another session of this course on Islamic inheritance law, in which we shall be looking at calculation of inheritance in situations where more than one person dies and the sequence of deaths is not known. If two or more individuals who are mutual heirs die together at the same time, or it cannot be ascertained who died first, then, according to the Hanfi, Maliki, Shafi'i fiqh, and the Salafi scholars, neither of the deceased can inherit from each other. In line with general principles of inheritance, only heirs alive at the time of death of the propositus can inherit from him. It therefore follows that individuals dying simultaneously cannot inherit from each other. If mutual heirs die together, and it is known that they did not die at the same time, but the sequence of deaths is not known, then the Shafi'i fiqh states that the inheritance is suspended until the sequence of deaths is established by evidence or by agreement amongst the surviving heirs. According to Hanbali fiqh, if it is confirmed that they all died at the same time, then the alive heirs will inherit. However, if the sequence of death cannot be ascertained, then all the victims are entitled to inherit from each other, but only from the property they already had, and not from newly inherited property. Let us look at a few examples to illustrate how to calculate inheritance shares in cases of multiple deaths where the sequence of deaths cannot be ascertained. In this first example, two full brothers, Bilal and Mubarak, die in a shipwreck, and it cannot be ascertained who died first. They leave behind their mother, their paternal uncle, and one daughter each. Bilal leaves behind a net estate of £900, and Mubarak a net estate of £1,800. To solve this problem, we first calculate the inheritance distribution of Bilal's estate. Bilal's mother would inherit a Quranic share of 1/6, his daughter a Quranic share of 1/2, and his paternal uncle, meaning his father's full brother, will inherit the 1/3 remainder as residuary heir. Bilal's estate is valued at £900, so the mother gets 1/6 of £900, which is £150, the daughter gets £450, and the paternal uncle gets £300. Now we calculate the inheritance distribution of Mubarak's estate. In this case, Mubarak's mother would inherit a Quranic share of 1/6, the daughter 1/2, and the uncle the remaining 1/3. Mubarak's estate is worth £18,000, so the mother gets 1/6 of £1,800, which is £300. The daughter gets £900, and the paternal uncle gets £600. If we now add up the share allocation of each heir, the mother gets £450, Bilal's daughter gets £450, Mubarak's daughter gets £900, and the paternal uncle also gets £900. In this method of calculation, Bilal and Mubarak do not inherit from each other. This is how the inheritance distribution would be according to Hanfi, Maliki, and Shafi fiqh. Let us now do the calculation according to the Hanbali fiqh, which allows the victims to inherit from each other. Let's assume Bilal died first, in which case Mubarak would inherit from Bilal. Bilal's mother would inherit 1/6 as Quranic heir. His daughter would inherit 1/2. His brother Mubarak 1/3 as residuary heir, and his paternal uncle would be excluded by Mubarak. Mubarak's 1/3 share is redistributed amongst the mother, Bilal's daughter, and paternal uncle. The mother gets an extra 1/6 of 1/3, the daughter gets an extra 1/2 of 1/3, and the paternal uncle 1/3 of 1/3 as residuary heir. So the final share distribution of Bilal's estate is 2/9 for the mother, 2/3 for his daughter, and 1/9 for the uncle, which is equivalent to £200, £600, and £100. Now we repeat the process assuming Mubarak died first, in which case Bilal would inherit from Mubarak. Mubarak's mother would inherit 1/6 as Quranic heir. His daughter would inherit 1/2. His brother Bilal 1/3 as residuary heir, and his paternal uncle would be excluded by Bilal. Bilal's 1/3 share is redistributed amongst the mother, Bilal's daughter, and paternal uncle. The mother gets an extra 1/6 of 1/3, the daughter gets an extra 1/2 of 1/3, and the paternal uncle 1/3 of 1/3 as residuary heir. So the final share distribution of Bilal's estate is 2/9 for the mother, 2/3 for his daughter, and 1/9 for the uncle, which is equivalent to £400, £1,200, and £200 respectively. In this example, two full brothers, Bashir and Kamal, die in a shipwreck, and it cannot be ascertained who died first. Bashir left behind his widow and a daughter. Kamal left behind 2 daughters. Bashir leaves behind a net estate of £8,000 and Kamal a net estate of £24,000. To solve this problem, we first calculate the inheritance distribution of Bashir's estate. Bashir's daughter would inherit a Quranic share of 1/2, his wife a Quranic share of 1/8, and his paternal uncle, meaning his father's full brother, will inherit the remaining 3/8 as a residuary heir. Bashir's estate is valued at £8,000. So, the daughter gets 1/2 of £8,000, which is £4,000, the wife gets £1,000, and the paternal uncle gets £3,000. Now we calculate the inheritance distribution of Kamal's estate. In this case, Kamal's 2 daughters would inherit a Quranic share of 2/3, and the uncle the remaining 1/3. Kamal's estate is worth £24,000. So the 2 daughters together get 2/3 of £24,000, which is £16,000, and the paternal uncle gets £8,000. We now add up the share allocation of each heir. The Bashir's daughter gets £4,000, Bashir's wife gets £1,000, the paternal uncle gets £11,000, and the Kamal's 2 daughters together inherit £16,000. In this method of calculation, Bilal and Mubarak do not inherit from each other. This is how the inheritance distribution would be according to Hanfi, Maliki, and Shafi'i. Let us now do the calculation according to the Hanbali fiqh, which allows the victims to inherit from each other. Let's assume Bashir died first, in which case Kamal would inherit from Bashir. Bashir's daughter would inherit 1/2 as Quranic heir, his wife would inherit 1/8, his brother Kamal 3/8 as residuary heir, and his paternal uncle would be excluded by Kamal. Kamal's 3/8 share is redistributed amongst the Kamal's 2 daughters and the paternal uncle. The 2 daughters get an extra 2/3 of 3/8, which is a 1/8. The paternal uncle gets 1/3 of 3/8, which is 1/8, as residuary heir. So the final share distribution of Bashir's estate is 1/2 for the daughter, 1/8 for his wife, and 1/8 for the uncle, and 1/4 for Kamal's 2 daughters, which is equivalent to £4,000, £1,000, £1,000, and £2,000 respectively. Now we repeat the process assuming Kamal died first, in which case Bashir would inherit from Kamal. Kamal's 2 daughters would inherit 2/3 as Quranic heirs. His brother Bashir would inherit 1/3 as residuary heir, and his paternal uncle would be excluded by Bashir. Bashir's 1/3 share is redistributed amongst the daughter, the wife, and paternal uncle. The Bashir's daughter gets 1/2 of 1/3, Bashir's wife gets 1/8 of 1/3, and the paternal uncle 3/8 of 1/3 as residuary heir. So the final share distribution of Kamal's estate is 1/6 for Bashir's daughter, 1/24 for the wife, 1/8 for the paternal uncle, and 2/3 for Kamal's two daughters, which is equivalent to £4,000, £3,000, and £16,000. We now add up the share allocation of each heir. The Bashir's daughter gets £8,000. Bashir's wife gets £2,000. The paternal uncle gets £4,000. And the Kamal's two daughters together inherit £18,000. In this example, a full brother and sister, Baba and Sarah, die in a road traffic accident, and it cannot be ascertained who died first. They left behind their mother and a paternal uncle. Baba also left behind his widow and Sarah her husband. Baba's leaves behind a net estate of £156,000 and Sarah a net estate of £72,000. To solve this problem, we first calculate the inheritance distribution of Baba's estate. Bashir's mother would inherit a Quranic share of 1/3, his wife a Quranic share of 1/4, and his paternal uncle a share of 5/12 as a residuary heir. Bashir's estate is valued at £156,000. So, the mother gets 1/3 of £156,000, which is £52,000. The wife gets £39,000, and the paternal uncle gets £65,000. Now we calculate the inheritance distribution of Sarah's estate. The mother would again inherit a Quranic share of 1/3, and the husband a Quranic share of 1/2, and the paternal uncle the remaining 1/6. Sarah's estate is worth £72,000, so the mother inherits 1/3 of £72,000, which is £24,000. The husband 1/2 of £72,000, which is £36,000, and the paternal uncle the remaining £12,000. We now add up the share allocation of each heir. The mother inherits a total of £76,000, Baba's wife £39,000, the paternal uncle £77,000, and Sarah's husband £36,000. This is how the inheritance distribution would be according to Hanfi, Maliki, and Shafi fiqh. Let us now do the calculation according to the Hanbali fiqh, which allows the victims to inherit from each other. Let's assume Baba died first, in which case Sarah would inherit from Baba as a full sister. The mother would inherit 1/3 as Quranic heir. His wife would inherit 1/4, his sister Sarah 1/2 as Quranic heir. There is no residue for the paternal uncle. The total sum of shares is 13/12, so we apply the doctrine of al-awl, reducing the shares proportionately. The mother share is reduced to 4/13 from 4/12. Baba's wife's share is reduced to 3/13 from 3/12, and Sarah's share is reduced to 6/13 from 6/12. Sarah's share of 6/13 is redistributed amongst the mother, the paternal uncle, and Sarah's husband. The mother gets an extra 1/3 of 6/13. Sarah's husband gets 1/2 of 6/13, and the paternal uncle gets 1/6 of 6/13 as residuary heir. So the final share distribution of Bara's estate is 6/13 for the mother, 3/13 for Baba's wife, 1/13 for the paternal uncle, and 3/13 for Sarah's husband. The monetary value for each heir is £72,000 for the mother, £36,000 for the wife, £12,000 for the paternal uncle, and £36,000 for Sarah's husband. Now we repeat the process assuming Sarah died first, in which case Baba would inherit from Sarah as a full brother. The mother would inherit 1/3 as Quranic heir. Her husband would inherit 1/2 as Quranic heir, and Kamala's brother would inherit 1/6 as residuary heir, and her paternal uncle would be excluded by Kamal. Kamal's 1/6 share is redistributed amongst the mother, Baba's wife, and paternal uncle. The mother gets 1/3 of 1/6, Baba's wife gets 1/4 of 1/6, and the paternal uncle 5/12 of 1/6 as residuary heir. So the final share distribution of Sarah's estate is 28 70-seconds for the mother, 3 70-seconds for Baba's wife, 5 70-seconds for the paternal uncle, and 36 70-seconds for Sarah's husband, which is equivalent to £28,000, £3,000, £5,000, and £36,000 respectively. We now add up the share allocation of each heir. The mother inherits £100,000. Baba's wife inherits £39,000. The paternal uncle inherits £17,000. And Sarah's husband inherits £72,000. This would be the distribution according to the Hanbali fiqh. This brings us to the end of this session. Insha'Allah, see you in the next one.